Before I close my eyes forever, I need to tell something I hid even from my own family. Two of the children everyone believes are mine are not. And this truth, which burned in silence for decades, now needs to come to light. My whole life, I lived as an ordinary man, building the image of a present father, a hard worker, a respected person. I sat at the table with my children, taught lessons, told stories to help them sleep. But deep in my heart, I knew I carried a lie so deep that many times it stole my sleep and ate away at my soul. The first secret was born early, at the beginning of my marriage. When my wife announced the pregnancy, I celebrated like a blessed man. But inside me, there were doubts. And one day, in a moment of weakness, she confessed that the child might not be mine. The shock split me in half. Even so, I decided to stay silent. I raised that child as if they were my own flesh and blood, even knowing the blood running through their veins was not mine. Years later, fate set me before the same mirror of pain. Another child was born. Again, the shadow of betrayal. Again, the certainty that crushed me in silence. I could have walked away. I could have told the truth. But I chose the burden of silence, believing that love and presence were stronger than DNA. Today, about to leave, I can't take this weight with me. Not for me, but because I believe the truth, however painful, needs to find the light. I wasn't a father by blood, but I was a father in every gesture, in every tear, in every embrace. This is my final confession, and if this story has reached you, write in the comments where you're watching from. I want to feel that, somewhere in the world. My voice can still be heard before it falls silent forever, before I close my eyes forever. I need to tell something I hid even from my own family. I carried this secret for so long that, at times, it felt more alive than I was. It was like a shadow that followed me through every birthday, every Sunday meal, every smile I forced in front of the people I loved most. Two of the children everyone believes are mine are not. I spent my life being seen as a decent man, a present father, a husband who fulfilled his role. No one ever suspected that, behind my gestures, there was a heart in pieces. The world saw me as an example, but inside I felt the weight of living a silent lie. Not a lie I chose out of malice, but one that, somehow, was imposed on me, one I accepted to keep my family together. How many times did I sit at the table, looking at those who called me father, and feel a knot in my throat? How many times did I want to shout the truth and free my chest of this burden? But I held back, afraid of destroying everything around me. I knew that, if I revealed it, nothing would be the same, and so I chose silence. But silence is treacherous. It spares no one. Little by little, it corrodes, like rust hidden in the strongest iron. While everyone saw me smiling, I cried inside. As the years passed, the truth grew heavier and heavier, until the moment came when I could no longer bear it. That's why I'm here now, leaving my last words, because there's no more time, no more strength to hide. What I'm about to tell may shock you. It may hurt, but it's the only way I can rest in peace. If this story has already moved you, I ask one thing. Hit the like button now, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to feel that my voice, even fragile, still reaches faraway places, that it crosses oceans and cities, and that someone, somewhere in the world, hears me as I open my heart one last time. And the first time I realized my life would be built upon a lie was the day I held my firstborn in my arms. I still remember the smell of that night, the sound of rain falling outside, the silence that filled the house, and my heart pounding faster than I could control. My wife had just announced the pregnancy. I, a young man full of dreams, felt like the luckiest man alive. It was as if God had given me the greatest gift a person could receive, the chance to be a father. I ran to tell friends, neighbors, family. I wanted everyone to know that life was growing inside the woman I loved. I felt pride, joy, a warmth that seemed to light up even my grayest days. During those months, I dreamed of the future. I imagined teaching my child to ride a bike, taking them fishing, showing them the value of work and honesty. But there was something that bothered me from the start, a shadow I didn't want to admit. Strange looks, uncomfortable silences, a different way my wife carried herself that I couldn't explain. I ignored it, clinging to the idea it was just anxiety, fear of the unknown. When my child was born, I remember the moment I held them in my arms for the first time. Small, fragile, dependent on me. But at the same time that I felt love, I felt a chill. Something inside whispered there was an invisible distance between us. Time went by, and one night, when the house felt quieter than ever, my wife called me. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that the child might not be mine. The words echoed like hammers in my head. I wanted to believe it was a lie, that fear had made her delirious. But her eyes left no doubt. My world collapsed. I stood at the edge of an abyss. I could reject that child, throw my wife out, destroy everything we'd built. Or I could swallow the truth, live the lie, and raise that child as if they were mine. I chose silence. I looked at the little one, sleeping innocently in the crib, and realized they were not to blame. They hadn't chosen to be born into betrayal. They didn't deserve to pay for the mistakes of adults. And so I began to live two roles: the loving father everyone saw, and the shattered man who cried in secret. Every birthday, every smile, every hug reminded me of the weight I carried, a weight that kept growing, even as I hid it behind a trained smile. And that night, my world collapsed. But I chose silence. The years went by, and with them the weight of my secret grew. The boy ran through the house, called me dad with all the innocence in the world, and I answered with a smile. But inside, every time I heard that word, something in me broke a little more. I was a father, and I wasn't. I had all the gestures, all the responsibilities, all the admiring looks, but not the truth. Pretending is a cruel craft. You smile when you want to cry. You celebrate while inside you're in ruins. I learned to play the role of the exemplary father. I was there at birthday parties, at school meetings, on family Sundays. No one ever suspected. To everyone, I was the man who kept the house standing, the family's foundation. But at night, when the house sank into silence, I stared at the ceiling and felt tears soak my pillow. How many times did I ask myself, will he find out one day? Will his look change when he learns he doesn't carry my blood? These questions were like chains locked around my chest. I even wrote letters. Letters I never sent. In them, I said everything I didn't have the courage to say out loud. I asked for forgiveness, explained my choice of silence, tried to justify with love what was, in truth, cowardice. But the next day, I tore them up. I couldn't risk it. The secret started turning me into someone else. I was present, yet always distant. People saw me laugh, but no one noticed there was a broken man inside. It's hard to admit, but there were days when I couldn't even bear hearing the word dad. It felt like a blade cutting my soul. And yet, I loved him, more than I can explain, because, even without my blood, that boy had my heart. Every step he took, every victory he won, I was there. Maybe that's the greatest paradox of my life. To love deeply while hiding a truth that could destroy that love. Years went by like that, and with every birthday, every school achievement, every proud moment, the silence got heavier. I pretended so well that sometimes I even forgot for a moment, but one closer look in the mirror reminded me who I was. A man divided between love and a lie. And if you've come this far with me in this confession, I ask something simple. Consider subscribing to this channel. Stories like mine, buried for decades, deserve to be heard, and your subscription is what allows us to keep revealing voices that would otherwise never reach the world. But know this: fate wasn't done with me. I believed that mistake would be unique, that life wouldn't repeat the cruelty of condemning me to this silence. I clung to the hope that, if I carried the burden, the future would give me peace. I was wrong, because years later, when time seemed to offer me a second chance, the story would repeat itself. And this time, the blow was even more cruel. I believed that if I bore the burden of silence, life would reward me at some point. Deep down, I hoped that, one day, I'd have the chance to begin again. And when my wife told me she was pregnant again, that hope was reignited inside me. I thought, now, yes, now I'll have a child who is truly mine. Now I'll be a father, for real. Those months of the second pregnancy were different. I devoted myself even more, trying to live every detail, every doctor's appointment, every little movement felt in her belly. I daydreamed about a boy who resembled me, my smile, my eyes, my way of walking. It felt as if I was about to win redemption for all the years I'd carried. The doubt of the first child. When the baby was born, I remembered the joy that filled the house. Relatives gathered, friends celebrating, the home full of life. And, for a few moments, I truly believed I was stepping into a new phase. But as the days went by, something inside me became unsettled. I watched him carefully, and, the more time passed, the more a familiar sensation grew. That boy didn't look like me either. It was like dying twice. The first secret was already an unbearable weight, but I had learned to live with it. Now, though the wound was reopened even deeper, I didn't know how to bear it. It felt as if my whole life was a performance, a theater staged to deceive others and myself. The nights became longer. I got out of bed and paced the house in silence, watching my 2 boys sleeping, and every time I saw their innocent faces, the conflict ate me alive. How could I not love them? How could I abandon them? They were part of my routine, my heart, my very existence. But, at the same time, the echo of the lie stood there, reminding me that their blood was not mine. I almost gave in. I thought of leaving. I thought of abandoning it all and finding a life far from that farce. But the mere thought of leaving them without a father tore me apart. It didn't matter what had happened. It didn't matter the betrayal. Those children were innocent. And, somehow, I already knew I couldn't live without them. So, once again, I chose silence. I swallowed the pain, hid the tears, and kept playing the role the world expected of me. Only this time, the weight was doubled. The burden was bigger, and each day I felt more distant from myself. And it was then that I realized silence didn't just eat me from the inside. It was turning me into someone I no longer recognized. The years piled up like dry leaves on an autumn road. The city changed, neighbors moved away, a few friends died, and my children grew up. I watched them transform before my eyes. First steps, first words, choosing a school, first girlfriend, graduation. So many small victories that should have filled me with pride, and they did, in fact, but always with that shadow behind my chest, whispering that all of it stood on a secret. I lived a duality that started to confuse me. By day, I attended meetings, worked, went to parties. I was the calm, steady face, the provider. At night, I'd lock myself in the bedroom and let silence crash over me like a heavy blanket. How many times did I look into my children's eyes and try to find there a confirmation of paternity that would never come? How many times did I smile at their mother, pretending nothing had happened, while the ground gave way beneath my feet? Appearances demanded dedication. I learned to memorize words of encouragement, to say the right things at the right moments. I'm proud of you. You've got this. Always by your side. And I believed, naively, that a love performed could somehow mend what the truth had torn. That care could overcome the root of a lie. But time doesn't heal lies. It only covers them with a thin layer of normalcy that can crack at any moment. There were family parties when I laughed and celebrated, while, deep down, I repeated to myself the reasons for keeping everything hidden. There were promotions at work that made me feel important. And, at the same time, I wondered if I deserved that success, knowing part of my life stood on a morally questionable choice. People praised me. What an incredible father. What an upright man. I'd accept the compliments out of politeness, but they hurt, because I knew I was, in a sense, betraying the idea of truth a home deserves. And there were intimate moments no one saw. Nights when I'd go through old photos, looking for traces of a time before everything had been censored by doubt. Hidden letters I never dared to send. Notes that brought tears when I reread them. I tried, at times, to find relief in drinks and idle hours, but it was all a bandage. The wound stayed open while I pretended it didn't. Bleed. I created rituals to protect myself from questions that could undo me. When the family gathered on important dates, I took a more active role, made jokes, organized lunches, hosted get-togethers. That way, I kept myself at the center, as if my very presence guaranteed stability. Maybe I believed that, by being indispensable, no one would study my imperfections too closely. That's my children built their own lives, jobs, marriages, children of their own. I watched with a tenderness that filled me with pride, and a guilt that ate at me. I thought about the nights I held them, the care during fevers, the long talks about the future. I thought about how every genuine gesture had mixed with the lie I sustained. It was a terrible paradox. Authentic love and conscious omission coexisting in the same chest. And as I realized the lie had taken root for so long, I began to understand there wasn't just one victim. There were several intertwined lives. Mine, theirs, my wife's. Every decision of mine had a domino effect. The certainty that the secret didn't just destroy me, but shaped the destiny of those I loved most, made everything even more unbearable. Still, routine followed its course. I was the public image of the man who held the family together, but inside, I felt my own identity fading. With every fake smile, every hug I held a little tighter so no one would notice the trembling. my soul grew more fragile. And that's how I lived for decades, building memories for others, while amassing a weight that no longer fit in my chest. Yet, even under that burden, there were moments of genuine beauty. The children's laughter, the advice I gave the son who was graduating, the pride in a mother's eyes when she looked at her grandchildren. Those moments reminded me that, despite it all, in many acts I had been a true father. The problem was that the truth needed to be faced, and I could feel time calling in the death dot. And as I replayed all that in my mind, I realized the silence that once felt like a choice was starting to betray me in ways I couldn't control. Small things surfaced, questions too innocent, comparisons of physical traits, comments that cut like knives, and each put cracks in the building I had worked so hard to raise. And then, realizing I couldn't push the truth any further, the inevitable question came back to haunt me. How would I take this weight off my heart without destroying the people I loved most? The answer to that question came as a crisis, a moment that forced me to face my choices, and that would change everything forever. This time, I almost couldn't bear the weight of silence. As the years went by, I realized silence wasn't just a kept secret, it was an invisible prison. I walked, worked, smiled, but inside, space felt smaller and smaller, as if the air thinned, and with each breath I drowned in memories. My body started to tally the bill. Sleepless nights became more frequent. I tossed in bed, listening to the tick-tock of the clock, imagining a day when the truth would come out. Not by me, but by fate. My health, once steady, began to show cracks. High blood pressure, racing heart, chest pains. The doctor said, "It's age, it's stress, you need rest." But I knew it wasn't just age, it was the weight of what had never been said. The secret didn't just gnaw at my heart metaphorically, it felt like invisible hands were squeezing it. There were moments I came very close to telling everything. I recall one night when one of the boys, already an adult, sat beside me and said, "Dad, I'll never be able to thank you for everything you did for us." Those words were sharpened knives. I nearly cried right there, nearly told him. I opened my mouth but couldn't. Fear paralyzed me. Fear of losing their respect. Fear of ruining the memory of all those years. Fear of seeing their love turn to contempt. I wrote letters. Many. Some began with, "My children, I need to tell you the truth." Others were more direct. "I am not who you think I am." But invariably, I tore them all up. The ashes of those letters may have flown across the backyard like tiny fragments of a truth that never left my chest. My wife. She carried guilt in her eyes. Over time, I realized betrayal didn't free her. On the contrary, she became a prisoner of the same silence. There were conversations we never had. We slept in the same bed, lived the same days, but a distance stood between us that couldn't be crossed. Sometimes I wanted to shout, accuse, demand explanations. But other times, I saw in her the devoted mother who also loved those boys, and that silenced me. The confrontation wasn't just with her, it was with myself. I asked if my choice had been cowardice or love. Would it have been braver to tell the truth from the start, or more noble to protect those children from a revelation that could have destroyed them? These questions followed me on every solitary walk, every rainy Sunday, every family celebration where my smile was forced. And time, relentless, gave me no rest. The boys grew up, built their own lives, and I felt more and more that I was losing my chance to tell them. The more years passed, the harder it was to reveal. It was like a wall rising brick by brick. At the beginning, easy to knock down. Later, impossible to cross without demolishing everything. Asterisk, until I began to notice something inevitable. Death was approaching. The tired body, hospital visits, daily pills. Everything reminded me my end was near. And with it came the question that gave me no peace. Will I take this secret to the grave? Asterisk, that question was my ghost. And no matter how I tried to run from it, it followed me in every shadow. There was no ignoring it anymore. I had to choose, leave in silence or reveal the truth, no matter the cost. And when I finally felt my time running out, I realized the only way to rest in peace would be to open my heart and confess everything, even if it was too late. It was on one of those days when time seems to slow down, that reality hit with full force. I woke up to the smell of medicine on the bedside table, my hands shaking more than usual, and the clear feeling that something inside me had finally broken. It wasn't just my body growing weak, it was my soul, exhausted from carrying a secret that only grew heavier with time. I'd tried to outsmart fate, now it was collecting. I spent hours sitting in the living room chair, looking at the photos on the walls. So many memories, birthdays, trips, school championships, birthday parties with poorly baked cakes, a mother's proud looks, and, among them, like stains on a beautiful canvas, the dark spots of what I hid. I understood, with a cold clarity, that keeping up the pretense would shove those I love into a lie so rooted it could shatter lives, if discovered all at once by others. It was a silent violence I'd been committing for years. It wasn't a heroic epiphany. It was the accumulation of small facts that showed me there was no more room to back away. My health was worsening. Medical appointments were more frequent. The doctor spoke of risks. I felt a deep fatigue, and each night was a fight between the urge to confess and the fear of the wreckage I might cause. It was a solitary struggle, without spectators. Just me and the memories putting me on trial. I remembered when the younger boy brought home a clumsy drawing of me in crayon. He held it proudly and said, "Look, Dad, I drew you." Those words stopped me cold. How could I explain that this dad was, in part, a shadow I had created? How could I say that, despite all the love, part of the bond didn't come from blood? The tenderness of that moment hurt so much that night, I felt an urgent need to be honest, not to cause pain, but to give meaning to all of our lives. I talked to myself for hours. I wrote another letter, this time with steadier hands, with a less childish voice, more direct. In it, I said what I felt, the reason for my silence, the weight of my choices, the love that never failed. I planned how to say it. I didn't want a confession thrown out in a fit of anger, or something said in the middle of chaos. I wanted a calm conversation, prepared, a moment where I could explain not just the truth, but the reasons behind my choices, what led me to protect those boys in a way that was wrong yet, paradoxically, full of care. I looked for my wife on a grey afternoon. We sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea forgotten between us, and I looked at her like someone reading an old map. She read my face and knew, before I spoke, that something had changed. It wasn't a fight. It was two exhausted hearts reaching the same conclusion at the same time. She didn't deny, she didn't justify. There was sadness, regret, and a silent recognition that the lie had been part of us for so long that living it had become, in a distorted way, a form of care. We decided I would tell them first. I wanted to spare the boys the shock of finding out on the street, through gossip, from third parties. I wanted to offer them my voice first, a fragile voice, but an honest one. I planned the form, chose the words carefully, and rehearsed, not to invent, but to ensure it wouldn't sound like accusation, revenge, or hatred, that it would sound like explanation and a plea for forgiveness. Still, fear was huge. Fear that love would break, fear that respect would turn to contempt, fear that everything we had built would lose the solidity I believed it had. But there was something bigger than fear, the need for serenity, for coherence between my inner life and the world I would leave behind. I didn't want to depart with a lie buried in my chest. If the truth was painful, then let it be told by me, with love, so the days to come wouldn't be built on silence and omission. I spent weeks preparing the moment. I chose an afternoon when everyone would be home, asked them to come for lunch without revealing why. I wanted the revelation to be human, around a table, with the everyday clatter of cutlery, with the aroma of food, not in a cold, bureaucratic setting. I wanted them, when they looked into my eyes, to know what was coming was a confession from a man who, despite his mistakes, had always loved them. And in that planning there was acceptance. Maybe some wouldn't forgive. Maybe some would step away. Maybe my name, until then respected, would become something I'd have to carry with pain. I accepted that as the price for not taking the lie with me to the end. I preferred the risk of temporary pain to the eternal weight of omission, and that's why now, with a weaker voice and a tired body, I decided to reveal everything, not to cause ruin, but to set us free so the truth could finally breathe, and the bonds that truly matter, those woven through care, could be reassessed, in the light of honesty. And when we sat at the table that afternoon, eyes fixed on each other, I felt the air grow thin. I knew what I was about to say would change our lives forever. Lunch was served. The smell of food spread through the house, but nobody really cared about what was on the plates. The air was heavy, almost tangible. My sons laughed together, talked about everyday trivialities, but my heart beat like a drum. I knew that, in a matter of minutes, I'd tear apart a curtain of decades of silence. I looked at each one of them. In my boy's eyes, now grown men, I saw the reflection of years of living side by side. I saw love, I saw respect, I saw the certainty that I had always been there, and it was precisely that presence that gave me courage. I took a deep breath, my trembling hands resting on the table, and began, "Sons, there's something I need to tell you before I go. Something I have carried for a lifetime, something that kept me from sleeping on many nights, and that only now, with time running out, I've found the courage to reveal." Silence took over the room, conversations stopped. The clatter of cutlery ceased. All you could hear was the muffled sound of rain against the windows. I went on. "Two of the children everyone believes are mine, are not my blood. I raised you, I cared for you, I was there at every step. But the truth is, you were not born from me. Still, in my heart, you always were, and always will be, my sons." The words fell like stones. I saw shocked looks, hands covering mouths, tears being held back. But I didn't back down. I needed to say it to the end. You were my pride, my reason to get out of bed every day. The blood may not be the same, but the love, that was complete. It was true. It was a father's love. And if I erred by hiding it, it was out of fear. Fear of losing you, fear of seeing everything we built collapse. I don't want you to forgive me now. I only want you to know that, even without sharing my blood, every gesture, every hug, every tear of mine was yours. It always was. There was silence, a silence that seemed endless. I feared rejection. I feared hatred. But then I felt a hand on mine. One of my sons. He simply said, "Dad, you've always been our dad. The rest doesn't matter." In that moment, I felt a peace I had never known. It was as if the weight of a lifetime had been lifted from my chest. For the first time, I breathed without chains. End. That's why I say now, to you who are listening to me, don't carry lies to the end. The truth may hurt, it may shake the foundations, but it also sets you free. It took me a lifetime to understand that. Don't do the same. If this confession touched your heart, remember, love isn't only in blood, but in care, in presence, in sacrifice. Fatherhood, motherhood, family are built on truth and affection, not only biological ties. And before my voice fades, I leave you with one last request. Subscribe to this channel. Here, stories like mine are given a voice. Secrets hidden for decades find the light, and confessions that would never be heard reach you. Hit the subscribe button now, and join this community of people who believe that the truth, even late, can change lives. I've done my part, revealing what I hid for a lifetime. Now it's up to you. Hit subscribe and stay with me, because there are many other secrets that still need to be heard, before it's too late.